Hello viewers, this is your SSK and today we have an interesting story from Chandamama and the name of the story is Outwitted. The land Small Mount was ruled by a king called Chitrasen. Though he was young, he was extremely clever and never took hasty decisions. Small Mount was bounded on the west by another country called Big Mount. Parakrama, the king of this land, had long desired to invade and annex his neighbor's territory. But as long as Chitrasen's father was alive, he could do nothing. So he bided his time. When young Chitrasen became king on the death of his old father, Parakrama revived his designs for the conquest of Small Mount. He thought his task would be easy because Chitrasen was only a stripling with little experience in waging frontier wars. So he called his ministers together and outlined his plans for the invasion. The ministers fell in with his proposals, but first wanted to test the young king mettle. It was wise to know the enemy before engaging him in battle. The king thought this is a good idea and a letter was drafted to be sent to Chitrasen. The king and the ministers thought they would find out all about Chitrasen's courage and wisdom from his reply to their letter. In due course, Chitrasen received his powerful neighbor's missive, which instructed him to send some intelligence to the land of Big Mount, or else the young king and his ministers were not a little astonished at the strange request. The ministers realized that the request was no ordinary one, but that some sinister motive lay behind it. Chitrasen was baffled to the extreme. Just then, Madhyugi, a minister in the court, stood up and said, "Sir, give me but 3 months' time, and I shall solve the riddle of this letter." Chitrasen assented and wrote back to Parakrama that he would send what was requested in 3 months. 3 months was nearly over and a day remained to complete the period. Madhyugi came to the palace bearing a large sack on his shoulder and said to the king, "Sir, the intelligence that Parakrama wanted is right here out inside the sack. Let us send it to him at once." Everyone wondered what was in the sack, but no one dared to ask. Even the king was silent. Then the sack was sent off to Big Mount. Parakrama was surprised to receive the sack and in the assembled court ordered that it be opened. When the sack was opened, they found a small naked mud jar. Inside the jar was a big watermelon which hugged the sides tightly. The tendril of the melon sprouted through the narrow mouth and swung to the ground. The jar was new and smooth and round all over, not a crack anywhere. Inside, the king found a letter which the chief minister read out loudly. As requested by the king, Parakrama, we have enclosed intelligence inside the jar. Please take out the melon without breaking the vessel. The king finished reading this and looked around his courtiers. They pondered over the riddle of the melon inside the jar and wondered how anyone could have placed it there. Intelligence could be had only when they took the melon out of the jar without damaging the ladder. As no suggestions were forthcoming, Parakrama turned to his minister and said, "It seems that Chitrasen is not as foolish as we thought. We must be careful in dealing with him." Then Parakrama wrote back to Chitrasena, "Thank you for your thoughtful gift. I shall always treasure your friendship more than anything else." Chitrasen was delighted to receive such a nice letter from his formidable neighbor. Then he called Madhyugi and said, "Oh Madhyugi, the intelligence you sent Parakrama has saved us from an invasion. Tell me now, what do you send him to change him so?" Madhyugi bowed low before the king and said, "Your Majesty, I sent very ordinary things. 4 months ago, I grew some watermelons. When the tree began to yield fruit, I fed one bird into an earthen vessel. The fruit began to grow up inside the jar and filled it up. Then I cut off the tendril, closed the mount, and sent it to Parakrama with the message that intelligence. was inside the vessel and it was up to him to take it out without breaking the jar. King Chitrasen laughed at the cleverness of his minister who had outwitted King Parakrama of Big Mount and had saved Small Mount from disaster.